All right. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Hope everyone's well. Let's take a few minutes to really get to greet each other in the chat. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope you all have had a great and wonderful evening. We're here to talk about preaching, and we're very excited about having Dr. Charles Goodman with us. So please take a minute to go ahead and share this video, this conversation. Let everyone know we're on live. We'd love to have you interact with us as we get started with this conversation. Dr. Goodman, thank you very much for joining us tonight, man. We appreciate you. How have you been today?
I'm cool, man. It's interesting times, man. This is I don't know what else to say.
Right,
But,
right.
the intersection of a health crisis, economic crisis, political crisis,
Yeah,
racial crisis.
it's a lot, right?
Man, this has been an interesting year, man. But hey, we're making it. It's Monday,
Yeah,
so for every preacher that stands on Sunday, Monday is supposed to be the Sabbath, if that is if there is such a thing.
right, right.
Um, I'm in my last getting my last week of classes for this PhD I'm pursuing, man. So it's been cool, man. So I said all of this, say, man, I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. I'm good.
Well, good, man. I'm glad to have you with us,
I'm
man.
good.
We
Yeah,
appreciate you so much. Listen, tell us a little bit about your PhD. What you're studying. I know you got a doctor of ministry, but tell us about your PhD.
I do. Yeah, my doctorate of ministry was in preaching, preaching in the 21st century. I decided that my heart, honestly, that I have co-passions. And one of my definite passions is preaching. And the other one is leadership.
Okay.
I really believe in leadership. So preaching grows people, leadership grows churches. So got a great opportunity to do a PhD in leadership that I'm currently pursuing at Anderson University. And so getting ready to get down to my last semester. And
Wow.
it's been cool, the first semester. So it's been a grind, trying to manage that and still with my responsibilities of preaching. And I'm on the virtual road, whatever that is. So I'm having to record a few messages a week to send to other places. So that's kind of interesting. But man,
Yeah.
so I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to it. I absolutely love leadership. I do think you'll appreciate this, that in my studies, there's not been a lot of African-American voices in the conversation of leadership in church,
Okay.
right? So a lot of the books and things that I'm reading from a scholarly perspective, they don't hear our voice. And the Black church is unique, and how we lead and how we feed the flock and how we come up with vision and stuff is so unique. So I wanted to kind of add my voice to that. So when time comes, just add some more scholarship to that aspect of it. So, so I'm looking forward to it, man. Working on that, trying to figure out what I want to study, write about, whether it's post-pandemic leadership, because how we're going to lead after this is going to be kind of intriguing.
Right.
But man, I got something else I may tell you offhand that I'm really thinking about talking
Okay.
about, but
All
I'm
right.
not trying to get no tomatoes thrown at me in the comment section. So I'll say it, bump it. I'll
Yeah,
say it.
go ahead, man.
I'm intrigued by the leadership influence of Donald Trump.
Wow.
And how he's able to galvanize people through his rhetoric and other things that have got literally so many people buying into what he's selling. And I'm intrigued by it.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I think it's fluff. I don't think it's substantive. I don't think, that's my own personal opinion on it.
Yeah.
But it's intriguing.
Yeah.
That he got 72 million people to buy into his leadership with all that. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy that I don't know if that be what I end up focusing on, but I'm intrigued by that from a leadership perspective.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I don't know. Would that be something interesting? Have you ever thought about that?
I think I have. It's interesting to try to figure out the mentality behind what he's doing. Obviously, it's very strategic. It's not something he's just coming off the cuff with. And since it is strategic and it has proven to work, it has been interesting to me. The thing that I'm most interested in, however, is who it is interesting to. Like, who is it reaching? And whether or not I would have a place in that particular space using those strategies. So yeah, it's definitely good, man. I commend you on that. You have the guts to
I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I am just intrigued by it. I'm drawn to leadership. And this, what we sing, man, I'm just drawn to it. to
Yeah.
do everything that you've seen in 4 years and still be as bent on following that type of leader.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's worth exploration.
Right.
I think it's worth study.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I mean, I really
Yeah.
think it's something to glean from. So that's something I'm really thinking through and trying to figure out. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see.
I think you're onto something, man. I think it will be studied more. It's definitely caught us all off guard, and all the things that we thought were correct, quote unquote correct, he just blew that out of the water. And so we have to think about it and give it serious consideration. We're gonna have to talk about that again. I mean, on another another discussion as well. But we thank you for being with us, man. And we brought you on here because we want to talk about preaching. We're trying to figure out how we ought to embrace preaching. Obviously, preaching is something that we have to master. I think the content is given to us by God, but the delivery is all up to how we form that presentation and reach the people in an effective way. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do it than you. I'm going to say this, and I've never told you this personally, but I remember once before, it was a discussion you were doing with Pastor Dr. Pointer, I think is
my best friend in the world.
Yeah, man. And it was like a 2-hour discussion. And I literally learned how to build my sermon from that presentation you guys gave. Before then, it was kind of like a free flow type thing. And I was just basically give whatever I studied the best way I could. But you guys helped me put it into a structure so it can make sense to the people that I'm trying to deliver it to. So I want you kind of to just really, man, help us tonight and give us some insight on how you go about it. I'm just going to go through a few things. But just in case someone may not know, tell everyone who you are and where you serve and where your church is.
Dr. Charles Goodman Jr., native of Greensboro, North Carolina, but I'm currently serving an incredible body of believers in Augusta, Georgia, the Tabernacle Baptist Church. What's up, Tab? Miss y'all. So it's thriving ministry, man. Pre-COVID, I had the pleasure of worshiping with them 5 times on a Sunday. We had 2 locations. Actually, we were getting ready to plant our 3rd location and add an additional weekend worship. And we're going to still press forward with those plans. I think COVID has just expedited a lot of different things from my perspective. But, man, I get the opportunity to practice on them every week. I would push back on some of the opening verbiage you said, because I'm still trying to figure out how to master this thing, too, for preaching. And still trying to figure out how to communicate God's truth, in a way that's palatable and applicable for the people of God who are listening. And it has been a passion and desire to try to grow in it. And here's the unfortunate reality. I think I just finally settled in my spirit that I'm going to die chasing the perfect sermon, right? But I love the journey of it. I love the preparation of it. I love not just preaching, but studying. I think those marrying of it is very important. So, man, I look forward to this conversation. I always look forward to talking about preaching, man. Every these conversations, I grow myself because I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm someone that's really striving to get better every time that I stand. So good to be here tonight with you, man. I think that's cool.
I appreciate you so much, man. I mean it. I don't just say stuff, but I really mean it. You helped me. So I want to get more from that and try to expand it more. So here's the thing. Here's a question I want you to, let's just start off with this. When it comes to preaching in the 21st century, right? And I know you're a student, that's the thing that I love about your whole delivery. I can tell you spend time with the text, which is something very important to me. So as a preacher, what does it mean to preach in the 21st century? I mean, what does it mean?
I think, man, now that I'm seeing the trend of preaching, and one that I'm trying to do is preaching for me is truth through personality. I mean, that's a traditional definition of it.
Okay.
But I also think that, honestly, and this is where I'm really growing and really striving to be better at, is that there is no communication if there's only one way, right? So I really am trying to grow in this aspect of not just what I say, but I really want to be better intentionally when it comes to what people hear. Because if the truth be told, and you know how this is, man, we envision what the sermon is going to do, what it's going to produce. But I've learned a lot of times that how I'm rehearsing it in my mind is not necessarily how they hear it.
Right.
And how they comprehend it and how they understand it. So that's the other side of it that I am really trying to get better at, trying to get better feedback on sermons. I want to be practical. I really, truly do.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a period of my ministry, I was really trying to be so smart that I may have at moments preached above people's heads.
Okay.
And now my aim is to hit your mind and your heart. Right?
Okay.
I don't want to get above you, but let me preach with you.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that has kind of been where I'm at. So, I mean, I said all that to say that's kind of how I'm trying to go in this place, especially in a virtual space. You know, It's been almost 8-9 months. I've been preaching to empty sanctuaries, which means I can't rely on the response of the people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge and was hard because especially Black preaching, which is not a monologue, but a dialogue.
Yeah.
And so I've had to kind of focus more on making sure that my content is strong and really dealing with the feedback afterwards, because I don't get feedback in the moment.
Yeah.
I have to get the feedback afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. And it's tough. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, and that's kind of how I'm looking at things and trying to develop things in that way. So,
it's interesting.
That's how I'm viewing it.
No, that's really good. I was sitting here thinking, for me, preaching has been easier, and I don't know if this is a bad thing or not, but I found myself more comfortable preaching outside of the pulpit. I mean, what I mean by that is it's been easy for me to preach during COVID. And I guess maybe because for preachers who give too much thought on the congregation and their response, what they're going to feel, how they're going to respond to it, maybe it's a thing where, preachers think too much about the crowd to the point where it actually interrupts their flow and their ability to communicate what God has given them, to deliver. So how can you speak towards like people who may struggle with delivering it with consistency, with poise, with, structure? What are some tips for doing that?
Well, first of all, man, let me say this, that preaching does not start in the pulpit.
Yeah.
It starts in the study. It starts. And I'm grateful for a great mentor of mine, Dr. Brad Braxton, who really challenged me early on in the infancy of my preaching ministry, was that he really challenged me to take seriously study, to view the desk as an altar. And that stuck with me. I mean, it really has stuck with me. And so I try to give as much energy and effort in study, in preparation, prayer time, that I do in the actual presentation of a message. That honestly, what I've developed over the years is that I'm preaching from overflow, if that makes sense. So for me, it really is about how serious I take the study and formulating the message, which never ends. It's so crazy. I was telling someone, my staff yesterday, I'm still writing the sermon that I preached yesterday.
Wow.
Because they never end for me. So sermons never get concluded because they always are growing. It's a continual flow of a thought that even on my best efforts is woefully inadequate, but I'm trying. So I'm editing sermons even after I preach it. I just started a series entitled Mental Break. And the Lord kind of dropped this on me that really want to deal with the mental health of people. And because I really made with the premise that we will break if we don't take a break. So I'm looking at the example of Jesus over the next couple of weeks of how he managed it. So yesterday I preached a sermon entitled Get Some Sleep. Right? Storm's going. Right. Jesus is on the ship, sleep, right? And that thing really blessed me. I thought I did a way better job at 9. I almost wanted to do a do-over for the 11, but sometimes it's like that. But even today, just rewriting that, and then it began to spill over into what I want to do next week. I'm looking at, I think, Matthew 14, when Jesus hears about John the Baptist dying, and the text says real quickly, and then Jesus gets away to a lonely place alone, right? So I'm gonna talk about get some time away, right? So part of it is developing that, but that's getting built off of a sermon that I have not yet completed, right? I'm still thinking through, man, let me add some. I was working out today, and let me tweak a little bit what I said about that sermon yesterday, or I can go back some years because whenever it falls on me, every sermon is open-ended for me. That makes sense. Absolutely. So I am serious about the study, and I push every preacher, take that study time seriously, take preparation time seriously. I mean, if you want to be a great preacher, be a great student, be a great person of preparation. I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm. So here's something a question that popped in my mind as you were saying that. Do you think that great students automatically make great preachers?
No, no. I think there is some gifting to that as well.
Right. All right. So talk about that for me. Help me with that.
Well, preaching is everything, especially in the Black context, which I'm absolutely love preaching in the Black context. I mean, Black preaching is a gift. And not to say other traditions are not good, but there's some unique birthed out of the experience of the Black church that the Black preacher is able to kind of embody, right? We begin to embody the experiences, the emotive nature of our crowd, right? We're not, and so I think that's always been interesting. So I do think there's some practical things to work on. When I was early on in preaching, I was taking voice lessons. Wow. Not so that I can hoop better, but I honestly wanted to grow in the sustaining of my voice, right? There's some voices I hear like William Augustus Jones or others who have amazing voices. And so I wanted to work on certain areas of the practical side of preaching. So I took voice lessons. My senior year of seminary, I met weekly with Dr. Tom Long, who's a phenomenal preacher. The book on preaching, and we would literally sit in his office and we would rewatch my sermon from Sunday. At that time, it was VCR. You know what I mean? It was a VHS, and I was sitting there. We just go over not just the content, but how did I look? Did I have pulpit generalship? How was I holding the microphone? There's a reason why, honestly, I hold the microphone, because for a long period of time, I was just everywhere with my hands, and watching it, I realized it was distracting. So I developed a rhythm of putting the mic in my hand to give me rhythm, to slow me down, to create this moment. Like I was just watching something from yesterday. I'm forcing myself to watch my sermons, and I sway a little bit. Or I'll do things to give myself rhythm because I'm not reading, every sermon I've memorized. So, and bringing recall. So I think those are things you can work on. But once again, just because you study well doesn't make you a great preacher, but I don't think you can be a great preacher without studying well, if that makes sense, right? I think it has to be a tie. And I hate to make that subjective, man. Because sometimes we can get up on style, and I love good style too. And I think that it's important. We ought to work on it. But style without substance really to me is unfulfilling.
Yeah. I love that. So, okay. So we're talking about, there has to be a balance, obviously, of both. And so like when it comes to preaching, how do you maintain the context, the accuracy of the text? How do you present a message that is relevant to people in the modern day without exploiting the absoluteness of the text or the purpose of the text in the original writing? How do you maintain that?
I think for me, man, it's just my style of how I see. I read in story. Okay. I'm a story narrative thinker. As I've been really trying to go in this, it's funny you talked about Dr. Pointer, who's my best friend in the world, and we're as much alike we are. We're just different. Our perspectives are different, even though we end up in the same place. That time we had the conversation about it. And I really think that if I was to try to categorize my preaching style or my lens, I'm life situational narrative. Okay. Right. Okay. Life situational expositor. I don't know. For me is let me read this story and figure out how this applies to our contemporary life. Okay. I don't want to keep the biblical text just in its context, even though that's important. I got to be able to know where it is, but to bring it forward in a way that is palatable and is easy to consume. Right. Once again, it goes back to my original premise that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much what I say or how I say it if you're not hearing it right. Yeah. And so I've really been trying hard over the last couple of years of ministry for me, especially in preaching, to try to put myself in the pew and make it real and palatable and listen. Right. So I'll take you through, like I'm going through this mental break, kind of series. So how was Jesus able to sleep in a storm? Right. Sleep is hard when it's calm, right? But then what does the storm begin to represent and make that a palatable thing? Or even this piece that I'm looking at this week about Jesus getting the news of John the Baptist, right? Like I'm sitting there. So typically on Sunday night, Monday, I try to work on the tension of the text, and I try to get, what is the text really saying, right? What is this text speaking of in its context, in the broader sense of the gospel, in the life and narrative, the chronological movement of the characters in the text. I'm focusing on Jesus.
Right.
He gets this word that John the Baptist dies, right? So, and put that in full context, if there's anybody that Jesus is close to, it's John the Baptist.
True.
I mean, you know, he not only from a spiritual connection, this is the forerunner of him, the Messiah, but man, from a familial perspective, this is his cousin. His mama's cousin's son, right?
Right.
So here is Jesus getting this news that John dies, right? Then we get the backdrop on that. And this is, it's probably a tough time, because if you remember in the context of scripture, there was a period where John was questioning, all right, are you the one? So you have all these things going on, perhaps, and maybe Jesus and John's relationship was strained, right? Word came to him, and Jesus had to say, hey, man, go tell John, man, first of all, don't question me. You know, so all this stuff I'm thinking through from the perspective of Jesus. But he gets this word that probably shakes him to his core. And he gets away. He has to get away. He has to leave everything. He goes to a solitary place, right? And so for me, it's like, that's real life. Many of us have got moments like that. We get news like that every single day. We're in a constant news cycle of things that we hear and things that we. And so what Jesus does in that moment, he doesn't feel the need to have to respond to it. He just gets away. So part of my whittling down yesterday to get the attention of the text, and those who watch and hopefully act surprised on Sunday, is I finally came to this notion that some moments require space and not solutions. Which is antithetical to me, because as a person, I want to respond to everything. I want to provide a solution. And a lot of times for mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, sometimes the best thing that this moment requires is not a solution. It just requires space.
Right.
So that's that sermon in the infancy for me. But that's what I mean. For me, it's like, how can I life situational narrative, you know? So I love stories. I love stories. I love putting myself in those places. I think vividly like that. I think illustration, you know, that's how I kind of think. So.
No, that's good, man. So is there anything that you've done to have that eye? Because I know some preachers, they just have an eye for stuff like that. You know, we all read differently. You know, I may read it and never catch that perspective. Is there something that gave you that discipline of looking at it as a narrative?
Well, I think it's just since being a kid, I was a voracious reader. And so I think you just innately how you see things. Right. So like most of my friends and stuff, they take it from their perspective. I got some friends that are amazing with language and they can just parse subject, verb, Greek, Hebrew, you know, they can do that. So that's something that they just innately have. Right. I've innately just been a story person since I was a kid, since I was reading Archie comics and Encyclopedia Brown for those old school people out there, you know. So that's just how I think through things. And I think you just got to figure out your own way. Okay. God gifts us in certain ways that we must bring our total selves to the preaching moment. So whereas I may not be as strong as I want to be, it's harder for me to look at epistles and maybe Psalms and the wisdom literature, because those are not necessarily stories. But the other ones I may lean more towards, right? So I think you got to kind of figure out what your niche is and ride it out, right? You and figure out your strengths. You know, I'm all for developing and growing our weaknesses, but at some point you also got to magnify your strengths, right? At the end of the day, but it's game on the line. Mike, no, I can get this fadeaway off. He worked on it. That was strong for him. For sure. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who I think really gets a short end of the stick when it comes to the GOAT narrative, because the brother done one on every level, from Power school there in Philly to UCLA to Milwaukee to LA Lakers. He's the #1 scorer of all time, and he had one shot. Right. Got hooked. It wasn't like he went in the gym this year and said, you know what, I'm gonna work on the fadeaway. He probably had it in his game, but if you can't stop this guy hook, why am I gonna stop shooting it? You know what I'm saying? Right. And that led him to be #1 scorer of all time. So I think at the end of the day, as much as you work on your weaknesses, and I want to be a well-rounded proclaimer, I want to also build on my strengths. And I view story. Narrative is my thing. Give me a narrative. Let me walk through the nuances and the crevices of that. And it's just how the Bible comes alive to me. And I don't feel like I can preach a live gospel if it hadn't first been live to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got to enjoy it.
Sure.
You know, I get hyped to get up on Sunday because I enjoy what I studied and read all that week.
That's good. All right. So do this for us. Can you take us through like a scenario? Let's say that you've just got through finished preaching Sunday. This is Sunday night, and you're not necessarily in a series, but you know, you are thinking about the next week. And so where are you getting your inspiration from? How is the Lord speaking to you and giving you the next sermon for the next service? And then just kind of take us through that. Are you using Logos? Are you using, concordances? Like, what's your process to get from Sunday to Sunday?
Well, first of all, I'm always going to be in a series.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like a lost puppy if I don't have some kind of direction.
Yeah.
And like I said, that goes back, I talked about my friends. We meet once a year. We're having to make some shifts and changes to how we're doing it this year virtually. Can't wait to be with my brothers in that way. And we plan out the whole year. Like, I've already thought about some of the stuff that I want to do for next year. I think for next year is the year of expansion, reset, research, and restart. Right. Nice. So I already got a few things that I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to start the year off with a series on Noah. Because I think as we get in 2021, I think Noah gives us he gives us strategies to start over.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to do a series on refresh for him. Then hopefully in the summer, Nehemiah rebuild. So everything, I'm already throwing stuff out. So let me go ahead and say, first of all, I will always try to be in a series. Okay. It just gives me direction. I just want to do that. But so with that being said, that's what I'm thinking through. So Sunday after church, honestly, man, I'm getting home and I'm taking a nap. That's the first thing. And if it's a good one, depends on if something else, I may pick up a joystick and play a video game or something. I just need to unwind. Yeah. So at least I try to, in that moment, unwind and get that out. But I've tried to, and Porter has really pushed me to this, is before that night is over, I'm going to read my text that I'm looking at for next week.
Okay.
Not that I'll get a finished product, right? Just let me read the text.
Right.
So as I rest tonight, let me at least have that on my mind. I'm not trying to do any heavy exegetical work, but let me just read it.
Yeah.
And if possible, try to get my tension developed. What's a little tension? If I can, I really want to try to get that as best as possible.
Right.
But I'm not going to feel heavy about it. I know, hey, I got a week to work, but I need to get this done.
Yeah.
With my PhD work, I had to also try to marry school stuff with that too. So the reason I try to be light on my sermon prep early in the week is because I've decided to devote the early part of the week to finishing my PhD work.
Okay.
So I try to make that, if I'm trying to wrestle with those things as well. So I get it. So then I got it. I write it down. I'm an Apple phone guy, iPhone. That's Jesus's phone. So if you don't have an iPhone, I pray for you, and I pray the Lord will open up your blinded eyes, and that you will come to the side of righteousness. But the reason I like it, if people ask me, is not that I don't just feel like it's a better phone. I love the Notes app.
Yeah.
And so whichever thing that I'm on is able to be transportable.
Yeah.
Because I'm writing all my stuff in the apps, right?
Okay.
So that time you heard me in Porter, we do a sermon EPO. So there's certain things that I have, certain parts of a sermon that I at least want to have filled in.
Okay.
Whether I say them explicitly or not, there's certain things for me from a linear perspective that I want to at least flesh out the text, is certain things from the opening statement, tension, exegetical thought, central thing, life principle, takeaway or take home truth, relevant question, and then my moves, my principles that I try to do that. Now, I may not explicitly say that every sermon, but I know when I get ready to preach it, if I've checked off all of those, then I feel that I at least have completed my thought.
Yeah.
If that
okay. Yeah.
So the tension is always the first one for me. That's just something I'm really trying to work hard on, because that becomes a platform for me. What's the tension? What's this thing? So last Sunday, it was basically this tension of dealing with these external realities, the storm, that oftentimes are in contrast to the internal peace of the assurance of God, right? So I have storms, but then Jesus is sleeping. So if I was to just make it just a simple thing, like I said, with the one I'm doing this week, it is that some moments require space and not solutions.
Right.
Right. And really the tension for me as I try to build it up, and this is really in the infancy, is that the tension of feeling like I got to have a solution for every moment when some moments just call for space. Right. So I'll work on that. And then I just dealt with a little bit of exegetical thought. What is this text really saying to me? Right. What is this text just saying within its own context? Right. Just what is the narrative saying? So that I want to make sure I get that.
Okay.
I'll work on that maybe Monday or Tuesday to make sure I hone into that. And then it moves and morphs into what I call my central theme. Right. So now that I have the exegetical thought, what the text says, this is I move to where I want it to. What does it say for us today? Okay. How can I take this story of antiquity and then move it to make it have present application? Right
now, right there, Charles. Real quick. Now, what are you using for your exegetical work? Like, what are some of the tools?
I'm not even looking at stuff yet. I don't get to commentaries till Saturday.
Okay. Got you. Okay.
I don't do, but once again, that's not my lens.
Yeah. Got
There's some who I honor those who they got the worksheet out. They going through every. That's not how I look at it.
Right.
I don't get to commentaries of Friday, Saturday.
Okay. All right.
Gotcha. Mainly, basically Saturday.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Sorry, I just want to ask you that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's just me spending time with the text.
Okay. Good. You know, all right, that helps.
Now, once again, narrative. Now, if I was doing more epistles and things of that nature, I would do a little more word work.
Okay.
Or even this text, the one I just did, I did some word work, but it came in at the end, right? So that term storm in this past week's sermon was seismos, earthquake.
Okay.
That puts a whole new spin on it, right?
Yeah, it
this ain't just a regular storm. This is a seismos, right?
Oh man. Yeah.
But a lot of that doesn't come until I really get to my stuff. And that's about the end of the week. I want to feel this text. Yeah. I want to be on that boat with them. So I spend a majority of my time getting that together. Okay. And then raising what's my takeaway point? What's the thing I really want you to get out of this? What I'm simply saying in last week's sermon was, don't let storms rob you of your sleep. Okay. If you miss anything else I say, I ain't give you no Greek, I ain't give you no Hebrew. I really want you to know, don't let storms rob you of your sleep. Right. And then move to my relevant question and then move. So hopefully I get to that about Wednesday, Thursday. Okay. But it's hard that you say, because I will admit, my good friend, there's a couple of type of preparation when it comes to preachers. Right. Either you're a soldier or you're a surfer. Okay. And there's some weeks I'm a soldier. There's some weeks I'm so methodical, strategic. It's like my mentor, Dr. Bill Curtis, who starts Sunday night and his sermon is done by Tuesday. Wow. He's a soldier. He's so methodical. He's writing everything out. He just has developed that. But then there's some weeks I'm a surfer. You know what a surfer does? They wait on a wave. Yeah. Wow. And depends on, there's some weeks, man, I'm not getting nothing. I'm trying, I'm praying, I'm reading, and it ain't making sense. Yeah. It ain't clicking. And so I'm got to wait on that wave. I don't like those weeks as much, but they come. They come. Because part of the challenge, especially for preachers who are pastors, is that you are proclaiming and you're talking to the same crowd. And as with any parent who has children, when you feed them stuff, you don't want to give them the same thing all the time. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Part of my greatest challenge, I'm right now at a struggle. I have learned over the years, close to 20 years of preaching and pastoring, that I know my rhythms creatively as a preacher. Okay. Around this time of November, I am literally creatively tired. That's why I got to have sermon series. That's why this year of COVID has challenged me to this point. I haven't had a break. Wow. Typically, I try to take a Sunday in between series. Okay. I would be traveling. I miss about 5 to 7 Sundays a year that I'm traveling somewhere to preach for someone or, share with them. And it gives me a break. This year, I haven't had that. It's been straight boom, 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 boom. So every series I'm going into another thought, right? Yep. So when I finish this mental break series, I'm doing a series entitled Hope for Dark Days, where I'm looking at the messianic pronunciations from Isaiah, how he's foretelling Christ. But when you study it, Isaiah is having to look future wise for light of God in the midst of dark times.
That's
right?
good, man. Yeah.
But then as soon as that's over, is New Year's Eve, and then is our series. So one thing that this COVID has really robbed me of is that extra week to transition, to unload, and then upload. So I would say, I would love to say that it's that thing, but they don't always flow that way. But like I said, I got to have these certain portions of my sermon that's going to really help me to get that. And when they come, they come. But I really want to have those two things. But that just comes with preaching, man. I've been doing about 20 years. So if people look at my notes, they be like, how you going to preach this? Because it makes sense in my head. And you know what I'm saying?
So explain to me the process of you writing it out. So let's say Wednesday.
I have no writing. I have not written. My first sermon, The Doctor's In, Mark 5, is the only sermon I've ever totally written out.
Are you serious?
So what I would have is, I have some notes, and I have my points and stuff that I put on there, but I don't write them out. So there's no real complete thought. That's why if you hear me in multiple times, every sermon is different. Like I preached the same sermon yesterday, but my intro is going to be different. There's going to be certain nuances, everything else, because I'm always adjusting, free flowing, and developing the sermon.
Wow. That's impressive, man. That is extremely impressive. All right. So you're at Thursday. Let's say you're at Thursday now. What's left to do to prepare for your sermon, or you're pretty much done with your sermon at that point?
I wouldn't say I'm done with the sermon. Mm-hmm. Even after it is preached, it's still being developed.
Yeah.
So I would push back. There's some, like I said, who are maniacal. They ready. I got some friends. They have written it out on Thursday's writing day. They get away from it on Saturday. On Friday, they rehearse it on Saturday, and it's ready to roll. I'm literally still writing mentally when I'm walking into that pulpit. Wow. Because I'm still thinking through this sermon. I'm embodying it. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably the wrong one to ask when it comes to definitive, what are you taking? Because there's things that I'm still thinking through. My staff laughs at me. I had for a long time, I ministered. When I go up to preach, in my hand, I always take with me an iPod. I have an old Apple iPod. It's an old one that's thin. Mm-hmm. I had some people early in my ministry get mad because they think I'm texting in service. No, once again, I like Apple because it keeps all your notes, right? So I can write it on my phone and it go to my iPod or iPad. So I would literally be sitting there and I'll have my notes in my iPod and I'm just going over it before I preach. Mm-hmm. When we had the 5 services going back and forth, I'm sitting in my car. My staff knew when to talk to me, when not to talk to me, because I'm still editing. I'm still trying to figure this thing out. I'm still trying to, all right, did I say this right? What's a better way to do this? Let me do a different intro. All right, how do I want? So I'm still, even literally, they'll tell you even now, I'm sitting there with this thing in my hand and I am developing this thing while I'm preparing to get ready to go up. Sure. It's never finished for me. So there's some who got it. Yeah. And I wish I could write a manuscript. Yeah. I wish I was a better writer. I admire those who have a great economy of words. Right. I enjoy wordsmith, man, but that's just not my gift that God gave me. So let me encourage those who listen, man, develop who you are. If you're extemporaneous preacher, develop that. If you're a manuscript preacher, develop that, right? Mm-hmm. There's no one way to do it, right? You just got to figure out what's best for you.
That's really good, man. And I was sitting here thinking the whole dynamic between a soldier and a surfer. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that again because, we like to think as preachers that every single Sunday we're ready. We got it. We got that word that we know. But talk to me about the times where, I haven't been preaching as long as you have, but I do. And I'm going to be completely transparent and honest right here. The truth is that every time we stand up, or at least every time I've stood up, I didn't necessarily think that I was as ready as I could have been. It wasn't that I wasn't trying to be. It was just simply that this Sunday is not one of those Sundays where I feel like this is the one, you know what I mean? And, you preach out of faith, obviously. And I know I'm probably going to hang myself out here. Preachers going to act like, that's blasphemous. And, they never had that kind of situation.
No. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm nervous every time.
Okay. So how do you work through that? Let's talk about that really quick. I mean,
I think that we need that.
Yeah.
That healthy trepidation and fear is significant to be effective in the pulpit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And man, I think what you're feeling is what every preacher worth their salt ought to feel every time we stand. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because if we have assumed that we've mastered it, we've lost the battle already. I'm fearful every time. My stomach is churning.
Yeah.
My palms are sweaty. Because one, I'm speaking for God, and that's in itself this huge boulder, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't take that lightly. It's all the old adage that the old preacher would say, man, you go up like a lion, you come down like a lamb. But if you go up like a lamb, you come down like a lion, right? So I never want to feel like I've mastered that moment and disrespect God.
Yeah.
I don't want to stand up in any kind of personal arrogance to think to myself, oh, they about to die. And then all of a sudden the Holy Spirit puts a little Baptist finger up and walks out and you out there by yourself. And every preacher has felt that to some degree.
Surely.
But man, I think I'm always nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous every single. I've been nervous in front of 3 people and I've been nervous in front of 30,000, man. It's a nervousness. But one thing that I try to do, and this is what I believe God is honored, is I try to give God a rested body and a ready mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, man.
And they may not fall out. Listen, sometimes if we get really concerned about how they're going to respond, that's why this season has really challenged and I think grown a lot of preachers, me myself, because I can't take a cheap way out. I mean, if you're in a Black preaching environment, we all know the things that we can say to rouse a crowd, right? I mean,
yes, sir.
you can the cheap shortcuts, the things to say that can get a crowd to move. Well, there ain't no crowd to move. So we got to really be honest and really be straightforward with what we're saying. So once again, I want to give God my best. So I'm always going to tell people now how the crowd responds is how the crowd responds. I'm going to try my best to be solid. And I'm going to try my best to explain this text to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And there's things that we always leave on our desk. There's things that we always, may not have all together, but I want to give God that, a rested body and a ready mind and let God do the rest. I think that's another part. We don't talk about that much, but I think it's another part of preaching that I think gets overlooked.
Right.
The Holy Spirit in it.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I mean, we can prepare all day long. I've seen people have the most brilliant written sermons that don't go nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen some people who couldn't put 2 words together in a way we would think is eloquent.
Yes, sir.
But man, by the time they get through, you just felt something.
Come on, man.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's another part of preaching that I don't think gets enough acclaim and gets enough understanding is really the spirit. This is a spirit endeavor, to have preaching and to take us flawed vessels to share this word, immutable word, this powerful, life-giving word to people that it changes their lives. It's not based on my eloquence. It's not based on how well I put this thing together and how well I formulated unpacking the passage, which I'm going to try my best to do. Yeah. It's the spirit, man. Preaching is a spirit work, man. And that's a part I don't think we talk enough about,
Absolutely. Guys, if you're listening, please don't be shy about asking your questions. I love to pose the questions to Dr. Goodman. He's really helping us right now. And I appreciate you for being here with us. One of the Facebook viewers asked the question, what are you reading right now?
Man, that's a great question. School books. I can't wait till this week is over, man, so I can get in some of the stuff that I really want to read. But I've been inundated with a lot of kind of theory books, Northhouse leadership theory and practice, and some other things that had me reading. But I'm really looking forward to diving into some stuff. I got some stuff on my Kindle and I just pushed up some other stuff. I'm really kind of into the social thing, book called Cast or some other things that I'm really looking forward to. My brother gave a wonderful book, Esau Macaulay, Reading While Black. I think it's just a phenomenal read, especially for us who want to try to get the Bible right and see ourselves in it. I think it's just an incredible read. Dr. Freddie Haynes has a good one entitled Rocking the World with Your Words. I mean, he's one of the foremost guys when it comes to rhetoric. He changed preaching. I tell people all the time, Freddie Haynes changed preaching. He moved the tenor and tone of preaching. Before it was a crescendo. It was like an airplane taking off. Freddie Haynes popularized the multi-climatic sermon,
Mm.
that
Break
you
that
don't have
down.
to wait to the end to crescendo. He's
Mm.
crescendoing all throughout his sermon.
Okay.
And I think you see that in modern preaching through that kind of thing. But just some other stuff, man, like The Color of Compromise by Jamar Tisby.
Yeah, that was good.
Some other things, Cass. I'm really into this moment. Begin Again, Eddie Glaude, as he writes on James Baldwin. So just some other stuff, man. But if you're asking me ministry stuff, I'm always thinking through that. This one book that I gave to my staff, Rethink Communication, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Just in the messaging part of it.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I think we have to learn in this day is the content is not just what we say across the pulpit. It's also what we promote on social media. It's also the things that we have to keep, sermons ought to keep living, if that makes sense. So
absolutely.
That's some of the things I'm thinking through. Yeah.
That's really good. I'm gonna ask you two questions. This is a two-part question. The first question is, what's right with preaching? As you observe, this is not a criticism, it's not judging. Just as you observe preaching, what is going right with how preaching is being done? And then the second question is, what's being done wrong with preaching? If you don't mind answering that.
Wow, great question. And man, they're great and complicated. I think what's right is I'm seeing a lot more people taking preaching seriously.
Okay, good.
I have been very encouraged by the preaching that I'm hearing in this season. That's getting away from some of the fluff.
Yeah.
That's really being helpful, because I think in moments like this, we need a strong gospel. You know what I mean? Not that weak, watered down, pray your way out of it. Some stuff we're gonna have to languish in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. I've really seen a call back to people, and people that I've listened to and had privy to hear, of a strong gospel in the midst of everything that's going on. So that's really been something I see right. As far as wrong, man, it's hard to say. It's just in this season, man, we have to be very careful what we say.
Yeah.
With such a focus on the virtual space. And I think that we just have to be mindful that also our audiences are larger. One thing that I had to change in my preaching that I'm still working through, and it's hard, is that before I viewed preaching in a localized context. I was preaching to the people of Tabernacle in a physical location, and people that were viewing us, we just invited them in to watch us have church.
Right.
Well, things have shifted. I'm talking to people around the world.
Yeah.
And I had to be more intentional about that. I had to be more intentional about the cultures and the verbiage that I'm using and the images that I'm painting and the illustrations that I'm doing. So it's made me have more of a global worldview in my preaching now than I typically would not have had before. So if that's the case, I think that perhaps is something I'm seeing wrong, is that seems in some corners or spaces of the kingdom, a failure to embrace what is inevitable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you're my friend and you're preaching in the backwoods of Virginia, and you're on Facebook, or you upload, well, then your audience is not just who's out there that you see. There's this larger narrative, larger audience of people that we don't see. Right. I wrote an article about that I thought was kind of intriguing. I was challenged by, I did this blog about that. So I think that's it. I think that we're just not embracing the fact that we've become global voices. All of us.
Yeah.
You don't have to be on the Word Network to be heard around the world now.
Absolutely.
As soon as you upload, right? And it's not just what you said today. They can go back and listen to stuff that you said.
Absolutely.
So that was it. I would say that.
That's really good. I think we have to be a lot more conscious of that, you know what I mean? And you have different, I think it would train you to be a better preacher, because again, you're not just stuck in your zone. It forces you to be accepted, or should we say, cognitive of different worldviews, different opinions. And, quite frankly, the internet is not as nice as our congregations. You know what I mean? They tell you.
And here's the truth. And here's the other thing. Right. There's more of a tendency now to hear parts of your sermon than the full sermon.
Yeah. So true.
And that's hard. I mean, people are listening midstream now.
Yep. Yeah, you're right about that. So let's talk about the listener, right? Because, we often stress the importance on the preacher. Obviously, there's a great responsibility there. I personally think there is equally a responsibility of the listener, the person that will come and listen to the message. So what are some things I've heard preachers say that they can tell a properly, quote unquote, trained audience because they have the discipline to sit down and listen and understand and comprehend what's actually being said. So,
David, hold on real quick.
Sure. Hey guys, really quick, while we're taking this quick break, if you have any questions, anything you want to send through for Dr. Goodman to answer, please make sure you send them through. I'm watching you on Facebook as well as on YouTube. So if you like to shoot through some of your questions or some of the things you would like for him to address, we'll be more than happy to have you to do that. But we're really enjoying this conversation with Dr. Goodman, and we thank you all for your input. Let's just see. We have some comments here through the Facebook. We just want to kind of address. We have one comment that says, thank the Lord for those preachers that still lean totally and fully on Jesus and on themselves or their knowledge to teach and preach his word. I think that was a very great comment to add to the conversation. All right. We have another comment. I think it was in response to something Dr. Goodman said. He said, a rested body and a ready mind is the thing that he really depends on to allow the Lord to speak to him. So this is a great point that was made, and I think is very helpful to all of us. All right. No, you're good, man. You're good.
I'm ready. Yes.
So no, you're good, brother. Just tell us a little bit about what do you expect from your congregation as listeners of your sermon, of the word? What's their obligation through the whole process?
Wow, I think to be active listeners. I would love to say that they are on bated breath and waiting and hinging on every word that comes out of your mouth, but
right.
That's not true. What I will say is what I want, and I'm really hoping, this is my prayer, I want to develop a more biblically literate, well, let me say it this way, a more biblically interested crowd.
Yeah.
I really want to spark people to take seriously study in devotion in reading the Bible, right? Yeah. I think for a long time we was biblically literate. That today is not, that's such a fluid term, but I would love for people to encounter in the preaching moment this love and desire that I have for the word of God in all of its intricacies and all of its, challenges and context, to develop that kind of love. And I want people to listen and say, man, I never thought about that. And that kind of intellectual curiosity concerning scripture.
Yeah.
And ultimately, once again, I think to build people faith, it's through the foolishness of preaching, man. There's something powerful about proclamation, right? That I still want to share hope and faith and still give them this thing we can't find anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
Which is a hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And that's a bedrock of my personal life. So I'm not just sharing it from a professional standpoint, but I love Jesus. I love the Bible. I love our faith, and hopefully kind of build upon those. That's really my aim and my heart to do that. So I would love a crowd. And that's what I want to challenge my people to, hey, let's pick it up. Let's engage it. Let's think through it. I want to touch your mind and your heart. So.
Absolutely. I think, and that's just really my big aim is for people to have the sort of passion that I have as a Bible student, not even as a preacher, but just as a Bible student. I want to see that sort of reciprocation whenever I'm communicating. I want them to be feeding me with that same interest that I have for the text. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. Like, how do I get people interested? And I think one of the things we just have to do is just continue to emphasize the importance of it and show that it is something that shouldn't be like an extraordinary thing, but it's something that should be expected. Like, we expect our congregants, our community to be learned, to be interested, to be intelligently thinking about the text and their faith, so that whenever we get to the pulpit, we're not trying to do things that probably should have been done at home. It's more of a a dialogue that will allow us to go further than we could have done independently.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I mean, hopefully we can have more conversations that would publicize. In fact, that's the whole point of CAEA, is to get people thinking about their faith and the Bible, so that when we get into communities, we can have this sort of conversation that will lead us to a bigger action that will, exemplify Christ. So,
and I think that's it. I think what you talked about is what the New Testament church did. I mean, they discussed scripture in community.
Yep, absolutely.
So I really enjoy, one of the things that we really had tried to push is what we preach on Sunday. We try to challenge them in their small groups or circles of growth, or what we call them out of church. Discuss it, talk about it, right? What did you hear?
Yep.
What do you agree with? What you don't agree with? And as preachers, we got to be open to hear that, that you want that feedback. It's hard, but you want that feedback. And I think that's what grows us. So I want a congregation that holds me accountable to try my best to be faithful in my study and faithful in my proclamation. So
that's really good, man. I'm gonna ask you this one last question. I think it's really, really a big question. What makes the African-American preacher different from any other preacher? And I mean, what makes African-American preaching different?
Well, I think, man, we just embody it. The Black preacher, the African-American preacher, a tradition that we have, it is birthed out of a crucible of pain and purpose, right? From the Bush Harbor.
Yeah.
That preacher that, was still able to preach hope and faith in a very painful kind of circumstances, slavery and those kind of things. So I think that's what we're birthed on. Divorce ourselves from the experience, right? We flow with Jesus, unlike other counterparts who perhaps view the story of Jesus differently, but the Bible story becomes our story.
Yeah.
We know what it is to be in captivity and slaves for 400 some years, right?
Yeah.
We know what Jesus felt, and yes, as we rush to Calvary, but we know what he felt within him addressing a lot of the ills of life. And I think that's the beauty that the Black preacher, the African-American preacher, has added to the kingdom, is the passionate way that we convey the gospel, whether that's in lecture style or hooping. Man, we have something to say. There's nothing like, in my opinion, the Black preacher. When he or she stands, man, there's something innate within us that just bubbles over. We have what Jeremiah calls, that fire shut up in our bones. That I think other demographics and people admire about our preaching, and try to emulate our preaching, right?
Yeah, you're so right.
Something like it.
It's interesting. I do see that. It is often, we have that thing we call call and response. People do enjoy that, even though it may not be the natural thing for them to do. I don't know that any of us can say we don't like people confirming to us that they hear us. You know what I mean? And for an African-American church, that's natural. We expect that. That's something we're
emotive.
Yeah.
And that's something we can't run from. Like, that's who we are. It's in the essence of who we are. That's one of the things that I think that out of COVID I miss, and I can't wait to experience it again, is the fellowship and the community of faith that's entrenched within our worship, right? Worship is not just hearing a sermon. Worship is experiencing the singing, but it's also experiencing community with my brother and sister on my pew, or seeing people that, bring a common experience to this moment. Right. I think that's the power of it. So I think that's so unique, man. We just bring something to the table that is so unique to us, and it's natural. Whichever way that is expressed, there's no, in my opinion, there's no greater pulpiteer than the Black preacher. We just have a unique way of conveying God's truth, and there's some amazing men and women who stand in every kind of category, just standing your truth. Yeah. So I think that's what we add. I'll be honest. Yeah, that's what I feel.
That's very good. I have a question on Facebook. One of the questions is, what does your devotion look like?
Every morning I'm reading. I do the Bible through a year, which is very important for me. And I try to read that. So I try to do a different translation every year. Typically what I'll do is, what I'm preparing to preach as a translation next year, I read it through the year before.
That's really
So I
good.
did Good News Bible. I'm gonna go back and read the New Living. So that's very important for me. So it's reading scripture and it's also prayer, you know. And I think that's so significant and important because for a large part of my ministry early on, I was only reading the Bible to get sermons, and I was preaching, giving food to others, but not feeding myself.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
I made a decision because I couldn't keep that up, man. I was a malnutrition proclaimer, and that felt bad, and my
Yeah.
soul wasn't being watered and fed. So I try to make that an everyday thing. I get up early, my alarm is set, and when it's up, when it goes off, I go to it's right on my phone. Let me read.
Yeah.
Sunday morning is kind of unique because I got a routine that I do. There's a book that I read, Praying Through Scripture, Kenneth Boer.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that for years, and I just
Mm.
keep going through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one that just allows me to kind of pray through scripture, and I really like it. It keeps me disciplined. I like having those.
Yeah.
And just certain things that I can pick up. So I love reading kind of devotionals. They're just good for me.
Good. That's very good, man. Anything else you'd like to add as like a suggestion? Any tips you can give people who are trying to figure out their way of preaching and the way that God wants them to preach?
Try it, work. I mean, preaching is done in the crucible of experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to try different things. Early on, my preaching was honed not in the pulpit like a tabernacle, but preaching for my grandmother's prayer band. It was only 3 or 4 ladies that would come and do
Mm-hmm.
that, and they invite me to give devotional, and that's how I learned. I learned how to communicate. I had to do vacation Bible school for my. And I was a religion teacher for a summer camp. If you can get kids excited about the Bible and those stories,
Yeah.
that helped home me. Early in my ministry at seminary, we used to go. My good friend Pastor Miller and his church, Messiah's Temple, they used to do what we call a nursing home ministry, and we would go, and I would just do a nursing home,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be sitting there, and if you can keep their attention, and if you can stay focused, it helped. My singing at seminary, I was the chaplain speaker every week for the Metro State Prison for Women in Atlanta, Georgia. And these were people who were not getting out anytime soon. And no one else wanted to do it. I want to do it. I want to learn and grow. So I tell people all the time, man, embrace every opportunity. Embrace every chance. Like, it don't have to be with the lights on, right? Every opportunity is an opportunity to kind of grow and develop your gift and how you think through stuff. So I was developing sermons, even though they wouldn't be technically called a sermon. I was learning how to deliver. I was getting confident in front of a crowd. I was learning how to complete a thought, flesh it out. I was learning pulpit generalship and engage in the crowd, keeping eye contact,
Yeah.
inflections of voice. So I think every opportunity is an opportunity to grow. Don't run from those. You don't. I think one of the things that I do hate that I see a lot of people do, especially young preachers, is that you wait for the opportunity to prepare. No, I believe you prepare and the opportunity will come. My pastor, when I first got licensed on the Dane, I still got it to this day. It's in my office. He made me form a preaching journal. So every week I had to work on a text. Now, and so I was just writing sermons. It was, even if they weren't full thoughts. And so people were so amazed, like, man, you get this opportunity to go preach here and preach there. I said, yeah, I'm getting them because I'm prepared.
Yeah.
See, many people wait till the opportunity come. Then you go, oh, I got to get a sermon together. No.
Right.
Prepare and the opportunity will come. So I think that's how it goes.
That's really good. My next question was going to be right after that, as you were talking, about the preacher who, and maybe I could ask it this way. There are some very talented, very gifted preachers. I think I heard Bishop Jakes that said something to the point where, there are some preachers out there that can preach him, under a bench. And, and so, but they don't have the platform. So what are some things you can do that may help us understand how to prepare for the platform and, being content in that place where nobody knows you, but you're being molded for that place where God will take you?
Well, I'll first of all say, if you're preaching to get to a platform, it's going to be rough.
Yep.
You don't preach for the platform, man. I really believe that. Be faithful, man. The Bible is very clear. And any preacher worth their salt ought to admit that we don't deserve any platform. I'm grateful for the place where I stand. I'm grateful for Pleasant View, my first church that gave this young preacher an opportunity. I'm grateful for Grace that nurtured me. I'm grateful for the sanctuary, used to be Glendale Baptist Church, and pastors that trusted me. I'm grateful for that little, like I said, prayer brand meeting. Once again, be faithful. Platforms are not for you. That's for God to place you there. And I do want to warn people, don't let a platform define you and your ministry. If I never had preached on Hampton, if I never had a tabernacle, that's not what we're going to be called for. I don't believe when we get to heaven, there's going to be a certain segment that he's going to say, those of you who preach to these large crowds, go over there. That's not what it's about. And if you're seeking the platform, let me tell you something. Most times, then your preaching is not undergirded and going to be graced by God. Most people get to these platforms weren't looking for them. And some who did, sometimes I learned that some scripture backs this up. You remember when the children of Israel, they kept asking for something and God cursed them by giving it to them.
That's right. That's right. He did.
Be careful what you ask for.
That's right.
So, I would always tell people, man, don't look for the platform. Platforms will come when you prepare. And if that's God's door to open, I don't want to open any door that God hadn't opened for me.
That's right. Right.
And once again, once you get there, be who you are. And I think that's so significant and important. So I would tell anybody, wherever you are, be faithful. Like none of us are. I'm not greater than any other preacher because I have more locations. That's not how God defines it. Right. When he talks about the Matthew 25, the talents, right?
That's right.
You've been faithful over a few. He gave that same one that had 2 talents to the same one that had 5 talents.
That's right. He did.
Same reward, right? It was
exactly.
So that's the same rewards going to the mega church preacher that's going to the country preacher that, has 25 some members. That's not what it's about. And, don't let people make you a celebrity. At the end of the day, we're servants. And my aim every day is to be faithful. Whatever God allows me to operate, whatever platform and thing, I just want to be faithful. Right. Even right now, tonight, I want to be faithful. This is a platform. This is something that I want to be faithful on. So I think that's important.
Man, that's good, man. And I was just going to say this, and I know you're gonna wipe it off. You're going to brush it off. I don't know that too many people speak that way in the position that you're in. And I would say the thing that the reason there's such an obnoxious element to preaching and pastoring and leading is because for many people, the standard is making it to that platform. So that if you don't make it to that platform, you're seen as a nobody, a person that hasn't made it. You don't have a successful ministry. And so I think, it would be very helpful for people to recognize and understand that your success is not determined by your platform. Like it's not the fact that you have a large platform, whatever that may mean, that determines your success. So I really appreciate that, man. I mean, I'm going to be honest, we just don't hear that so often. And
I'm the same preacher in person that I was in Alabama that I am in Augusta.
Yeah.
I didn't need Tabernacle to affirm that. And I will be under people who think that way. You should not. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't deserve any platform we get. I'm grateful God let me preach in any platform, in any pulpit. That's always how I've approached it. And because of that, I think that's one of the main factors beside the faithfulness of my grandparents that I think God he's trusted me with opportunities because I'm not married to him. I didn't need him. Right. Like one of my favorite books of all time is Anonymous by Alicia Britt Cole. And she writes this thing and she really does a deep dive into the 3 temptations that Jesus encounters. Right. And she goes on this whole thing where she says that when Satan offered to Jesus the kingdoms of the earth, Jesus could dismiss it because for 30 years, God had him on an applause fast. So when this was offered to him, he didn't need it.
Right.
And one of the challenges, man, we always got to put ourselves out. I mean, we all like to hear that we do well. I mean, we wrestle with that. We want people to acknowledge our work and our gift.
Right.
At the end of the day, if it never comes, there's one person that I'm really trying to please and honor, and that's God.
Yeah.
And I don't just say that. I mean, that's really been a hallmark of since I started this journey and trying to figure this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are fickle and they can love you today and disapprove of you tomorrow. And I think
Mm-hmm.
if that is your motivation, it's gonna be tough. Because every opportunity I've seen some people who made it to the stage, Dave, and then what?
Mm-hmm. 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 That's so true, man.
And if that's your aim, man, this preaching thing is not a destination, it's a journey. And that's the truth.
I love it, man.
It's
Listen,
not a destination, it's
tell
a journey. And
that's amazing, man. Go
we
ahead.
have to understand that. Yeah.
Tell me some things, and I mean, the more you talk, man, the more questions I have. So, tell me some character strengths of a good preacher, a good pastor. Character strengths.
Faithfulness,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Humility, love for the people.
Mm-hmm.
I tell every pastor, man, love God, love his word, and love his people.
Right.
And those are hallmarks. I mean, those are non-negotiables, right?
Mm-hmm.
And man, one of the things I love this text, Ezekiel 3, and it's always been a very powerful one for me. Ezekiel, the priest prophet, he gets this incredibly hard assignment from God. He gets sent to lead his own people, right? So God sends him, you go into the house of Israel, and he tells them, he said, look, man, they are going to be hard-headed and hard-hearted, right? So he tells them, they stubborn and their heart is going to be hard. He said, but don't worry about it. I'm going to make you hard-headed to combat them. Now, when I read that text, I struggle because the people are hard-headed and hard-hearted.
Right.
But God says, listen, Ezekiel, I'm going to make you hard-headed. But he speaks nothing about his heart. Because basically he said, I'm going to make you stubborn with them because I need you to have a fortitude, but I need you to always have your heart soft. Now, they're going to have hard hearts and they're going to have hard heads. You can't allow that to harden your heart.
Right.
I'm going to give you a hard head, but I cannot allow you to have a hard heart. And I think it's always been a challenge because I think that's it. We as pastors, leaders, got to have the compassion, got to develop empathy, and we got to have a soft heart. Like that's the part of it. And there's some people, man, I think, when you start talking about the difference between a preacher and a pastor, the pastor has to lead the people.
Yeah.
I'm not just concerned about how I feed them, which is very important. I mean, but I'm also concerned about how I lead them, what decisions I make. I'm accountable for, where we go and what we do. So I just think that's significant. Yeah. So I would tell people those things. It's the tenets, man. It's the same things that I think it takes for us to be good disciples.
Yeah.
It takes for us to be good pastors. Yeah. Like at the end of the day, let's not add. Don't complicate it. Like right. I'm asked to be a faithful disciple. I need to be a faithful pastor. I'm asked to be a compassionate disciple. I need to be a compassionate pastor, right? Yeah. So I think those things, they're intertwined. And I feel that the better I am as a follower of Jesus, better pastor I'll be, better preacher I'll be, right? So my intent every day that I wake up, you ask me about my devotional, it's not God just make me a better preacher, which I hope is a byproduct of me growing. My aim is, man, I want to be a better follower. Yeah. I want to get today better than I did yesterday. Yeah. I think if you can kind of get that, I think it pushes us. But we miss that, Some of us want the position, but we're called to be followers first, Yeah. So,
man, Dr. Goodman, you are the man. I'm telling you, man, I appreciate you. And I mean that in the humblest way possible. I'm not trying to exalt you in any way, but I'm just saying, man, I just love the good down to earth conversation. I think everyone on Facebook and YouTube, we've been getting comments, people stating how much they love the conversation, and everything has been great. Good, man. Yeah, absolutely. You've been a blessing.
Thanks for what you do, man. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to let Dr. Goodman go for the night. This is the second time with us, and I'm sure I pray that there'll be other times as well we can get together.
Anytime, man. Yeah, I enjoy it. I appreciate you, man, for so many. Thanks, man. Some great conversations, man. Thank you so much, man.
It is a pleasure. Well, you all, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you. We hope you will have a great rest of the night. Keep yourself locked in with CAEA. We're going to have these kind of conversations quite frequently, and Lord willing, we'll grow and we'll be edified by each other's gifts. Until next time, thank you for watching, and God bless.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you, man.